I have a question about protections for the seller in a sub-2 deal. Some people say buying with a wrap gives the seller the ability to foreclose if the investor stops paying. Others suggest having a pre-done deed in lieu given to the seller so the seller can just get the property back if the investor stops paying. Are there any other ways to give the seller protection? Well, there are a couple of ways you can give your seller protection. You can certainly buy the house from them on a wrap if that's what you like. You can also give them a deed of trust or a mortgage, whatever the document is for that state, that they can foreclose on you if you stop paying. A deed in lieu of foreclosure, yeah, I've heard people talk about that. I think that's a problem because if you give a seller a deed that you have signed, giving them ownership back of that property, wants to stop them from filing that thing anytime they want to, whether you're paying or not. So I don't think that that's going to be a best practice for you. Generally, what we do with our sellers is we make a promise to pay. If we owe them anything for their equity, we try to give them a promissory note. We try to avoid recording a document at the courthouse that shows that there's a second mortgage on the property. And we do this for a couple of reasons. Number one is, let's say that you buy a house subject to that has equity, and at some point in the future you want to pull that equity out. Now it wouldn't be a sub-2 anymore. You would be refinancing it and getting a loan in your own name or a partner's name. But let's just say that equity is buried in that property. If you got that second note there, you would have to pay them off to be able to do that. But the primary reason that we don't like to record second mortgages or buy these things on wraps is because probably a good 2/3 of the time, our sellers are in distress. They're in foreclosure. They've moved across the country for a new job. They're getting a divorce. Something's going on where their life is not exactly stable. And remember, if you're putting a buyer in that house or you decide you want to sell it later and you've got anything recorded that seller is responsible for signing off on, you can't find them, that can be a problem. So if the seller's not getting any money out of the deal, I definitely wouldn't suggest buying on, say, a mirror wrap's what they call it, when you don't owe the seller any money. You're just recording a document there that they would have access to foreclosing on if you don't pay. What we do is we give our sellers an agreement. We call it a seller's recourse document, and explains to them what they need to do if we don't make payments. Now, that's not going to happen, but in the event it did, they have a process to follow to get their house back. And we sign that and they sign that, and that's our agreement. But basically, we give our sellers a promise to pay. And if they're not okay with that, then we probably just can't do the deal. But you're worried about protecting the seller, and that's good. But you need to be thinking about things to protect yourself too, because sometimes sellers decide, they want the house back, or they shouldn't have sold it to you, or they sold it for too little. And if that ever happens and they're hanging on to a deed in lieu, even if you're making the payments, they could decide just to record that thing, and ownership's 9/10 of the law. So you don't want anything like that to happen. So I wouldn't suggest that deed, and I don't even suggest recording a document. I suggest talking to sellers who have a situation that needs a solution, and you offer that solution and they're okay with it, and you guys can do business that way. Hey guys, thanks for watching. While you're here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out these other great videos and podcast episodes.